Thank you all for coming today. I'm Todd Libby. I am a accessibility engineer for WebstaurantStore. I am also, and we'll get into this in a minute, with the W3C as an invited expert. I want to thank Devnexus, the sponsors, and you all for coming today and seeing everybody. It's been a great time. So a little bit about me. Again, accessibility engineer at WebstaurantStore. W3C invited expert. I am also an accessibility engineer at the Center for Inclusive Design in Sydney, Australia. Formerly at Nobility, and I have over 20 years of professional dev and accessibility experience. And I'm from the great state of Maine, where, if you couldn't tell already, we love lobster. And perfect timing again. This is great. I love lobster too, if you couldn't tell. I even have the socks. So you can follow me on Twitter at Todd Libby. You'll find plenty of posts about lobster rolls, lobster, and some accessibility sprinkled in there as well. That's my website, toddl.dev. If you have any questions, you can hit me up there. You can hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter, and that's basically it. So, let's get into it. This year's WebAIM Million Report of 1 million homepages, 50.8 million plus accessibility errors. That's decreased 1.1% since February 2021. It's an improvement. We'll take it. Would like to see bigger numbers there, but there needs to be more work to be done. That's my talk today. 887 elements to 955 elements per homepage we saw the increase from 2020 to 2021 with errors on each homepage. That's a 7.7% increase. 5.3% of all homepage elements had a detected accessibility error. It's okay, but we'd like to see better numbers on that. 96.8% had WCAG 2 failures. That's a lot. First one being low contrast text. That's been the big one, number one issue for the past 3 years, maybe even more than that. I don't have data on me right now, but we can see this. Some of us with cataracts, astigmatism, probably not going to be able to read it as easy, but when you look at the color contrast ratio, it fails. It fails by a little bit, but that's not the point. The point is you want to hit that 4.5 to 1 ratio, exceed it. It's one of those things where I say, when you hit AA on things like low contrast of text, please feel free to go as far as AAA. Your readers will thank you. So 1.4.3, the WCAG success criterion, contrast minimum says, you see right there, the visual presentation of text and images of text has a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. Now, I have people at my job, designers especially. Can we just do 4.5 to 1? No. Go for better than that. We can do better than that. The color contrast ratio scoring in WCAG 2 is a little flawed, and it's a little old. Thus, they're working on APCA scoring for WCAG 3. You want at least, we figured out the math, we did the math. I'm also in the low contrast text subgroup in the W3C. 10 to 1 ratio is ideal. That's how flawed WCAG 2.x scoring has been. please, this is in a meeting at my work where we went over some designs, some Figma designs. Please check your contrast ratios. Again, your readers will thank you. The second one being missing alternative text for images. Screen reader users will thank you when you include your alternative text in images, especially if you're on Twitter and you've seen the hot debate going on. They will thank you immensely on Twitter. Todd's got a lobster roll and a blueberry soda, and he's sitting on a picnic table enjoying a summer lobster roll. The first one, that doesn't work. There's no alt text. Second, you have, maybe that's a decorative image. You get empty alt text, you're good to go. Todd's lobster roll, hot butter, blueberry soda, that's good to go too. So the other points, along with the contrast of text and missing alternative text for images, you have empty links and missing form input labels. Form input labels are very crucial for screen reader users. Empty buttons. Screen reader users will not understand what an empty link is. They will not understand what an empty button is, and the screen reader itself will read out nothing. And then you have a missing document language. People don't understand. When you have a document, that document language is important. Those contributed to 96.5% of all WCAG errors. That's a lot. That's too much. So what can we do? Well, as I earlier stated, contrast that exceeds guidelines, 10-to-1. I mean, 7-to-1 is good, 10-to-1 would be ideal. There is a caveat behind this, though. White text on a black background or black text on a white background, that's a 21-to-1 ratio, but some users will have a problem with the text will be fuzzy, so you want to keep it under a total black and a total white color. Then you have accessible color schemes. You want your site to be keyboard accessible, screen reader accessible. You want accessible components in your apps, accordions, modals. A lot of these things can be accessible. You just got to put in the effort to make it accessible. And then performant web apps, PWAs. Perfect. Mobile apps and websites. You have more examples? Yeah, all right. Let's do this. You have more examples. Scrollable interactive content needs to be accessible. If you have something, let's say, in a div that has a scroll bar, for instance, that has to be keyboard accessible for the users. You have alternative text on images where necessary, like infographics, charts, and graphs. You want to make accessible when viewing mobile phone screens, especially when you have sunlight bouncing off your screen. Other situational disabilities, somebody has a broken arm, somebody has a child on their lap. That's a situational impairment, disability. Disability is just blind, deaf, or paralysis, right? False. It is not. Show of hands, anybody here have migraine headaches? Suffer from migraine headaches? Okay, I'm with you. That's a disability. Disability is just not visual, auditory, or physical. It's more than that. ADHD. Learning cognitive, fibromyalgia, arthritis, tremors, Parkinson's. There's a lot of hidden disabilities people don't see. And how many of you that get migraine headaches when you're on the web, like I am, and you gotta work through your work, and you're checking out a site, and you see that parallax scrolling? Does that trigger any kind of sick? You feel a little woozy, you feel a little sick. That happens to me all the time with parallax scrolling. So we got to watch out for that. So here's a list of my greatest hits that I've heard throughout my career. The client doesn't have the budget for it. How many of you have heard that? We'll get to it after launch. The first time I heard that, I thought I heard, we'll get to it after lunch. And I said, that's great. That's great? Oh, perfect. Then we'll get to it after launch. And, well, you said launch, gotcha. No, that's not great. Why do we need to even make this thing accessible? There's just not any time. Oh, there's plenty of time. We don't have disabled users. That one was great, because that was for a stakeholder that I work for had said that to me. And I said, we don't have disabled users. You have eyeglasses on, you have an assistive technology on your face. The people that use our product are not disabled. I don't know the people that well, I don't think, if I'm a stakeholder. This was the big one. It's a huge waste of time. That right there screams exclusionary. That I can't stand for. And this is why I do what I do. So if you're a developer and you get to the accessibility right off the bat, or even as time progresses, you're going to feel a lot less stress. There's going to be a lot less headaches. You won't be as gray as I am. You won't be spending time reinventing the wheel. You're less likely to be sued by an individual who's looking for a reason to sue the company when they come across your product and they can't access it. So we get all our lobsters in a row. I had to throw that in there. How do I get buy-in? There's a few steps that's worked for me, and that is I go to a stakeholder first and foremost. Once you get support from a stakeholder, from a higher up, that trickles down to managers. That trickles down to teams. That trickles down to individuals. You do this from the start, there's a little maintenance, because you have accessibility and clean code. Cite instances from the lawsuits that have been won against major corporations. Domino's Pizza is the most famous recent one. Target, Bank of America, the list goes on and on. Live testing with disabled users. I have done this before, and I am amazed at how the people that I've shown these videos to are amazed that their product is inaccessible when shown to them. I had a guy, I didn't realize this. That's why I'm here, to make you realize you have users that aren't like you and I. Team members or individuals that advocate in your organization. Have a person throughout each department or a team of people focused on accessibility as a liaison. Those members meet once every week, 2 weeks, get together, form your action plan. Someone that can answer questions and work with others to practice the guidelines and work with others to make accessible products. Documenting and tooling is crucial. That will help immensely when advocating for accessibility. It serves as an intermediary between departments. Assess the proficiency in the organization. Gauging where the product is or products are as far as how inclusive and accessible they are is a key priority. What's the current state of the product? What's the current state of the website? What's the current state of the mobile app? Getting the general idea of the level of knowledge that people have and teams have in the company is also important. Educating those people, which I've been doing in my new job, is important. Having presentations during a stand-up. I do a 15-minute presentation on a number of things, a number of topics for designers, developers, program managers, every week, and nothing but positive feedback. That makes me feel good about being at an organization where accessibility is embraced. Plus, they get sued. They throw that in there. How versed are they in the guidelines and practices? Now, the WCAG guidelines are not the Bible for accessibility. Oh, let me throw that out there too. How much training will you need? It's very important. How much training do you have already? Maintaining a written record of training, maintaining a written record of everything accessibility is important to the organization to meet requirements that apply to that organization. It's a great way to keep data on all the training done in the organization. Record the training and who trained and when it was completed. Some of these we don't do at my job, but we have very extensive documentation that I've managed to get together in 6 months that gives us a baseline of how the company is and where we need to go. If there is no inter-organizational training, use orgs, organizations that do training, such as DQ, TPGI, WebAIM, there's a bunch of them out there. Consistent implementation. It's very important to have that implementation and practice and accessibility. Design systems, they ensure accessibility and inclusivity. They also make code more understandable. Accessible components reduce time to implement. Testing procedures implemented so people can do their jobs well and efficiently. Once you do implement accessibility, everything falls into place. It starts from the designers. You get the design, it's an accessible design. Devs make it, and it's accessible. You go from there, you hand it off to the accessibility team. They do an internal audit, like I do. Maybe you have a few things that they need to be tweaked, but other than that, it's efficient, it's been done, and you don't have all that stress and all that, you're hurrying to get something done by Friday. Document your guidelines in a collaborative manner using tools. We do that also. So, in this country, in the United States, we have the American Disabilities Act, the ADA, we have Section 508, which is with the federal government, which follows most of the WCAG guidelines. The ACA in Canada, the Accessible Canada Act, and 301549 in the European Union. Again, WCAG, which is international. I believe it's over 180 countries have these guidelines and they follow them. You also have the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Articles 9 and 21, and I will have that link available later on. Why do I point these out? If you know a little bit about these or that they even exist, and you mention these, and you have a little bit of an understanding what they cover, makes understanding accessibility in different areas of the world better. Nope. So, hiring disabled people. It's very easy. I've been at 2 companies as a consultant that have hired disabled people. They test and record cases where they're using the product. They present to colleagues and stakeholders. You can outsource your testing with companies like Applause and Fable. There are many, many more than that. And again, hire disabled people. They have that lived experience. They have that experience of teaching and learning. I'm not a screen reader user. I have learned so much from people that use screen readers. I use a screen reader when I audit now, and have so for a while. I'm not the most knowledgeable in the screen reader area. I set mine to 1.5 speed. I've seen people do 6 times speed, and it just blows my mind. I'm like, what happened? I wanted to touch on something today, and that's accessibility overlays. I don't know if we've heard about how many of you have heard about accessibility overlays? Perfect. They're snake oil. Don't use them. They do not work. They create barriers instead of removing those barriers. Companies like Accessibility, for instance, they're the big player in the game. Yes, they do. They have that little accessibility icon, and you click on it, and that window pops up. That's an overlay. Boy, are they fun, especially when you're doing an audit. They have it now so that they're blocking tools from when you do your audit. You can't use that tool. So companies like Accessibility, AudioEye, EqualWeb, Facility over in France, who has sued a user who tweeted out that their product did not work, that created barriers. They sued that person. And you have UsableNet, UseAway, and many, many more. There are a ton of them. And I will have a link afterwards as well. Overlayfactsheet.com is a good place to read about accessibility overlays. Whatever company that you use, you will get sued. There's been at least 50 cases I know of companies getting sued because they have an accessibility overlay that does not make the claims they do. It's marketing. Don't fall for the grift. as much as we would like to see AI come in and make things accessible, which I'm all for, these don't work. They get rid of a few things. They help a little bit. I'm talking less than 1%. After been doing tests. And there are other people that have done more extensive testing than I have, and I have links for that as well. This is what you see at the top of the bottom of the page. This supposedly, this little block of JavaScript makes your site accessible. No, it does not. Just like putting on a pair of Nikes does not make me Michael Jordan. Far from it. So what do? Don't use overlays. Automated testing wherever possible, new releases, new changes, every iteration. Screen reader analysis before every release. That helps immensely. I've seen cases where we've had a release, we've tested it, and the screen reader does something it should not do. Annual audits. If you work at a place like I do, I'm doing an audit every day. That's the gray hair. A monthly audit even. User testing. Accessibility is never done. This is the most important part. We've got to keep moving forward. Just like the web keeps moving, we have to move with it. It's very important. And also like the web, accessibility is ever evolving. Running into these accessibility overlay companies. Now we have to educate people on, these don't work. Why? Here's why. And do the work. That's the most important part. It's a lot of hard work, but when we do the work, it reaps rewards. Inclusivity. Nobody's excluded. Don't be scared. A good friend of mine, Jeffrey Zeldman, I don't know how many of you know Jeffrey or know of Jeffrey, but he said our industry as a whole thinks less and less about accessibility. Not like we ever had a game on the subject. And talks less and less about progressive enhancement, preferring to chase the ephemeral goalposts of over-engineered solutions to non-problems. I have a developer on my team who loves to over-engineer everything. Div. Let's take it down a few notches. I like to show this not as I'm going to shame you all. I am judge, jury, and executioner. I read this and I felt that because I have family members who have experienced the same thing. And it's very important to understand the impact of an inaccessible product, website, or app. Design and develop for people not like yourself, and keep that in mind when throwing words like inclusive and accessible around. I ruffled a lot of feathers with that tweet. That's my job, that's what I do. If I'm not being critical, I'm not doing my job. Accessibility is a right. Wow, that's a big font. Accessibility is a right, not a privilege. I always say that because what the privilege is for me to be able to speak to people like yourselves and do the job I do to make, hopefully, something more accessible for the people that I advocate for. I'll go back to this link, this slide in a few, but the slides are up there. My links are on that. And I want to thank you all for coming today. What do we got for time? Sure. Very good question. I have not found one ever. They are mixed up because basically it just goes through each success criterion. Then you have your A, AA, and AAA. If I find one, I will definitely throw it on the link in my website. And I think I know the perfect person to ask that question to. No. AAA. Well, that's kind of tricky because nothing is ever 100% accessible, and you won't hit AAA in everything. It's just not possible. There will always be something. I guess the best case I can give you is Target. They got sued. They did AA standard. Did some things in AAA, but when people like myself have gone back, those things are no longer accessible. Something's been implemented on top of what they did, pretty much kind of canceling out, oh, we reached this, we sort of reached AAA here. AAA you can achieve in the low-hanging fruit, the things that I had at the beginning of the slides, low contrasted text, alternative text. There's a few other ones as well, but you can reach some AAA. I guess the best example would be contrast of text. The other ones are pretty tricky, though. That causes problems for people that have astigmatism or cataracts, definitely. Or in that presentation you were here for yesterday, things like Stargarts, where if you go to Two Blind Brothers website, you see what they see. They have Stargarts, which pretty much takes out the middle area of the whole page for them, because it's a macular degeneration of the eye, of the vision. So thin fonts are frowned upon, kind of. I mean, you don't hear a lot of typography as far as most people in the accessibility community, but there are people that will be like, pretty on the level of make sure your fonts are decent size. There's also in the requirements for 1.4.3, 18 pixels or higher, larger fonts of 24 pixels or higher. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Right.
I always felt like there should have been like some other group of person kind of like checking my work on that. Have accountability.
Yes, which is why I always say having a team of people, 3 people even. I mean, you have somebody there for checks and balances. Hey, you missed this. Hey, you missed, there's no alt text. At my work, there is a QA review from the QA team. They'll come back to me and say, hey, something is not right here with the screen reader. Can you go back and fix that? Perfect. A team of people is usually the best. Having those people from each department, one person as a liaison, to come in, you meet maybe, like I said, once, a week, every couple weeks, talk over everything. I find that that helps a lot. And you don't miss those things, and I have missed those things before. And that hits me pretty hard. When I miss something, I kick myself for that, so. Any other questions? All right, well, I'll let y'all go. Thank you for coming.